we put up a poll asking folks, how do you want to pursue an end to homelessness? Because we have multiple options here. Top answer was look into UBI and look into free housing, or rather housing as a right for people. This is one where even after putting up a plan for both, even after looking into, okay, what's currently going on that we could piggyback off of, or what do we have to start from scratch? Both seem so good. I'm happy to go after either as the let's call it the focus of solving the problem. Let's just look at what our options though. Let's just look at what our options are though, so that we can be crystal clear about how realistic this is. So first of all, a UBI, Universal Basic Income. That has been tried already. Yeah, that's right. Already in effect. Let me drag and drop what I'm talking about in here. Let me tell you about this fella right here. His name is that's not the screen I wanted. There we go. His name is Michael Tubbs. He was a mayor in Stockton, California. He's currently on Gavin Newsom's, I don't know, some advisory committee. But what he implemented was called the SEED Project. It was the Stockton Economic yada yada yada. Let's look at what it was. It was the stay around. Okay, well, yes, the Stockton Economic Empowerment Demonstration. I say that so you can Google it if you so want. Of course, we have the links in the description as well. This was where, for 2 years, the town he was the mayor of provided $500 a month to residents, randomly selected residents within a certain set of parameters. How did it do? Well, let me show you. This is how it did. The guaranteed income results from Stockton are in. Employment and productivity went up. Well-being went up. Stress went down. It allowed people to pay off debt. The money was spent on necessities and not drugs. We need a guaranteed income policy. Well, I agree with him. I wholeheartedly agree with him. The results of that experiment were so good, in fact, that there are mayors around the country that are looking to do the same now. In fact, Kamala Harris, she tried something on a national level with the Lift Middle Class Act. As far as I know, that died once it went to the what was it? Senate Committee on Finance, yada yada, whatever they call it. Kamala Harris's plan was not as straightforward. It wasn't $500 in the pocket of yada yada yada. It took the form of a tax break, and fair enough. That's fine. But it's not as good as actually getting a check once a month. My point in mentioning Kamala Harris is that if we want, we can push for this on a national level. You can contact your senator and say, listen, a UBI was just about proposed, and it at least got looked at by a Senate Committee on Finance. Let's have a look at doing a UBI, just a straight-up UBI. You call it what you want, but cash in the pockets of Americans. But that is certainly a harder fight. And if we want to get started, it's great. It is great to simply have results we can point to, such as that right there. If only there was a group of mayors around the country, and you can look up and see if your mayor is on that list. Aha! There is. In the description, there is a link for both the Twitter handle of the group and the website itself. That is for mayors for AGI. That's a guaranteed income. Most of them are saying $500 a month. Some of them have already started a pilot program. You could get that started in your city. You got a city of big enough size. In fact, let me take that back. Any city. Push for them to do a test, a pilot program. That means it doesn't happen for residents all across the board automatically. You simply do a pilot program. If you live in a tiny town, say 5 people. Pilot it with 5 people, 25 people. If you live in a city, 125, 500. Because the results of Stockton and elsewhere have been nothing but positive. Let's read a little bit about this, yeah? Oh, dear God. One thing that's it's true about your old pal Jake is I have designs on eventually getting a team of journalists together so we can work together and, just about crush every single one of these live streams. But until then, it's just me and Mustache trying to get this done, which does mean I will occasionally have to tread water while I try to pull up a website. There we go. So let's look at some of these cities that are doing it. Atlanta, Georgia. Former Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms started a pilot program. It went from 2018 to 2022. Here's a town you might not have thought would do this, St. Paul, Minnesota. Or rather, a city you might not have thought would do it. Mayor Melvin Carter started a pilot program. Jackson, Mississippi. Mayor Chokwe Lumumba apparently started a program. Columbia, South Carolina started a pilot program. Compton, California. Newark, New Jersey. Los Angeles, California. Shreveport, Louisiana, and so on and so forth. There are a ton of mayors starting these pilot programs. Get it going in your town. We got New York, Massachusetts, Texas. The Houston mayor, Sylvester Turner, started that one. West Hollywood, Baltimore, Tacoma Park, Miami Gardens, Florida, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, Denver, Colorado. Tons and tons of mayors are getting this going. You can absolutely start a UBI pilot program in your town. And the benefit of this will be twofold. Number one, citizens in your area will suddenly have more money to spend. If you own a business in a town, you don't have to live there. Just if you own a business and you like it when people spend money, when your customers have more money, great. Support that program. Even if you hate all other human beings on earth, don't like them, you just like making money yourself. That's still a great reason to get that started in your town because it's more customers. So yes, starting a UBI, universal basic income, you can have that begun on a local level until it is done locally so often that people who don't live in UBI towns get jealous and demand they get a state UBI. It's essentially the way the left tends to win all fights. We say, okay, we're going to live our lives a certain way. You do you, boo. And boo generally ends up seeing the grass being quite greener on the non-terrible side of the fence and then insists they have green grass too, instead of resisting lawn care. That's what happens. So let's make it happen. Start a UBI in your town. That's option 1. Option 2, free housing for people that don't have a house. In the U.S., to my knowledge, there's not a program like this. That does not mean no such program can exist. Here's an article from The Guardian talking about Finland's free housing. Let's have a look at it. It begins by discussing, by the way, an individual who's a couple of individuals, a group of people who are living in regular looking apartments. Here is the reality of that. It is important that they are tenants. Each has a contract, pays rent, and if they need to, applies for the housing benefit. That, after all, is all part of having a home and part of a housing policy that has now made Finland the only EU country where homelessness is falling. This is post-COVID, folks. When the policy was being devised just over a decade ago, the four people who came up with what is now widely known as the Housing First Principle, a social scientist, a doctor, a politician, and a bishop, just want you to remember, none of those folks were, to my knowledge, already in politics. They simply came up with the idea and they pitched it to the people that represent them in government. Remember, that is totally within your power. Called their report Nimi Ovessa, your name on the door. That's cute. I like that. Oh boy, there we are. It was clear to everyone the old system wasn't working. See if this sounds like the United States to you, folks. The old system wasn't working. We needed radical change, says Juha Kaiken. God help me, it's Finland. The working group's secretary and the first program leader who now runs the Y Foundation, developing supported and affordable housing. We had to get rid of the night shelters and short-term hostels we still had back then. They had a very long history in Finland, and everyone could see they were not getting people out of homelessness. We decided to reverse the assumptions. Excellent. They identified a problem. They chose not to ignore it. They chose to take it seriously. So what's it look like? What are the results of all this work? As in many countries, homelessness in Finland had long been tackled using a staircase model. That's what we use. You were supposed to move through different stages of temporary accommodation as you got your life back on track, with an apartment as the ultimate reward. Yay. We decided to make the housing unconditional, says Kaiken. There we go. To say, look, you don't need to solve your problems before you get a home. Instead, a home should be the secure foundation that makes it easier to solve your problems. Yes, that's what I'm talking about. That is a much nicer way of the example I gave in the previous video when I was saying, imagine smelling like the street, smelling like not like you haven't washed in 3 weeks because you haven't washed in 3 weeks. Imagine not being able to brush your teeth somewhere. Imagine not being able to shave somewhere. And then you try to get a job? Uneffing likely. Unlikely. Housing First's early goal was to create 2,500 new homes. It has created 3,500. Since its launch in 2008, the number of long-term homeless people has fallen by more than 35%. Not just people who sleep on the streets, but are homeless at all, has fallen by more than 35%. Rough sleeping has been all but eradicated in Helsinki, where one 50-bed night shelter remains and where winter temperature can plunge to negative 20 degrees Celsius. Imagine a decade ago where this wasn't in place. Trying to survive in that weather. The city's deputy mayor, Sanna Viskansa, says that in her childhood, hundreds in the whole country slept in the parks and forests. We hardly have that anymore. Street sleeping is very rare now. Man, it's totally doable. So how could we implement that in America? How could we pay for it? How could we get that done? I'm calling this heavy crown law. We should make heavy crown laws. Canada, for example, just banned foreigners from buying homes in Canada. Why? Because way too many foreign real estate companies were swooping in and buying up land. Guess who's foreign in this case? In the U.S., we wouldn't have the guts to do anything like that. But what we do have is tons and tons and tons of real estate companies that own way too much land. They own way too many properties. So in the United States, we have the top property holder having, I think it's 719,000 properties, or at least units available. Just that rental agency has more property than there are people who need a home. Just the top property seller. What can we do? We can pass state laws or federal laws. We could approach this either way. That means contacting your state representatives, or contacting your senator, or simply talking to your governor. But we could pass laws that require the biggest home rental agencies to supply free homes for the homeless. After all, these are the people who are contributing, the rental agencies are contributing to the homelessness problem. Why not make them pay for it? Literally. You want to do it in terms of a tax? Okay. But wouldn't you rather? Wouldn't you rather make them be the one who is entirely responsible for owning the buildings and providing the upkeep on the buildings, etc., etc., etc.? You do have the issue of homelessness is not always in the area where there are homes available. Fair enough. If you make the top renter in your state responsible for that, you will get new infrastructure built because they are legally required to do it if they want to keep making the just baskets of money they've been making. But you could also do it on a town level. If your town has a problem with homelessness, look around at who the top rental agencies are and insist that they cover housing for the poor in your area. Very doable. It's one of those things where we get told very easily, without much resistance, that, oh, it's a shame, but nothing can be done. Or it's a shame, but it's going to take years to solve. It could take a day to solve. You could pass one law. It goes into effect immediately. That requires apartments that, or rather, apartment renters who are just snatching up properties constantly, raising the price of homes, forcing, in some cases, people out into the streets because they simply cannot buy a home, or they cannot afford to buy a home, and they get bled out, paying to the renter, etc., 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 find themselves on the street. You can force them to make good on the harm they've done to society by purchasing and maintaining homes for people that can't afford one. We've seen what the results are in Finland. 35% drop in Helsinki, was it? 35% drop in homelessness? That's wild. I would love to see that implemented. So, yes, Good Love, PhD, says California has test UBI program that was put into place initially by Michael Tubbs. Did a great job. Now there is another one in West Hollywood. It's a popular idea, and more importantly, every victory, every time one of those runs and the city doesn't collapse. Look at that. Every time one of those runs, it is another point towards a general UBI for the USA. So it is an excellent idea to contact your mayor and say, I'm interested in a UBI pilot program. Or rather, if you want to use a less politically charged word, a GI pilot program. Don't want to call it that. An AGI pilot program, as in a guaranteed income pilot program. If you call it a pilot program, by the way, number one, it makes it clear that you're not saying commit to this for the rest of forever. It's simply see how it works. See how it works. And number two, it shows them immediately that you've done a little bit of work on this. For example, watching this stream and hearing about political things, they understand that you know what you're talking about. And with the link I've provided, you can show them, look, other mayors are doing this. Other mayors are doing this all over the country. You could do it too. You could be that cool mayor that I like. So what are the options we have for ending homelessness in the United States? Number one, UBI pilot programs. Look at the links. You can start it at a local level, simply by contacting your mayor, your city council, getting it going. Or, hey, anti-corporatist, what's up, fam? Good to see you. Or you could do the same thing, but with a heavy crown law, as in the top real estate seller in your area, be that the state, be that the town level, be that at if you want to say, let's try this nationally, they are responsible for providing the free homes for the homeless because they are a home provider.